8:15, Liam and I are joined by Dave Bushnell from Hullensian. He is the founder and MD of it. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Hello.
Could you start by telling us a bit about who you are and where you're from?
Okay, yeah. So I'm Dave from Hullensian, and I started Hullensian essentially because I, like you guys, I'm an out of towner. Moved to Hull in 2005, and around 2014, I think it was, the summer 2014, I was looking for somewhere online that told me where I was on a particular day. I couldn't find it easy, and so I had the idea to do it myself. So that was it basically. So that's where, so obviously I turned it into a full-time business from about 2016 onwards. And we basically work with lots of local businesses, providing advertising and marketing services, essentially, and that's what we do today.
Right, so we'll get to Hullensian later, but we're going to focus on you initially.
Okay.
Because you're the big name, like I said. So as a fellow out of towner, what do you think of Hull, generally?
Well, obviously, I love it, which is why I started.
Yeah.
I know we'll mention the whole What's On story later, but for me, so I started dating, so my wife, Laura, we started dating back in 2003. That's right, 2003.
You got to get that right.
20 years ago, yeah. It's 20, we've only just 20 years we've been together, right? So I'd never really heard of Hull that much before. I think so. I'm from Manchester originally. So we started dating, met each other through our church, and she was from Hull, and the only time I'd really heard of Hull is because I was dating a girl from Grimsby before then. Yeah. So in terms of towns and things, to me it was certainly an upgrade. But obviously Laura definitely was as well. So yeah, it was.
Taking yourself out of the hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. No. Well, she knows that, so that's fine. But she's. I'm totally lost the train of thought now. But yeah, so obviously with Hull, I started coming to Hull, and to me it was just, you're talking say early 2000s, and it hadn't had the investment it has now, but I never thought it was a particularly bad place. Obviously in the mid 2000s you then started to hear about all these guides that are coming out saying Hull's like the crappiest town in England and all this lot, right? And I never thought much about it. I thought it was all right. I came and it looked like I'm from north of Manchester. From a town called Middleton, right, which is in the Rochdale borough, and it just looked like any other northern town that I was used to. It didn't look any particularly worse or better than, and that was it. And so I used to come to Hull. Really, I thought, obviously at the time I was like 19, so you just did the basic stuff. The only thing I used to like doing was going to the cinema, and there wasn't a lot of choice here at the time. I remember there was only Odeon, which was falling apart. And Cineworld, which I think might have been like UCI or something, or UGC or something before. But it was, so there's only those things to do. But of course, I didn't live here. I just visited every weekend. It was mainly to see Laura, So it's just that, but what happened is obviously then in 2005, we wanted to be closer, and it was either, and there wasn't really an opportunity for her to come to Manchester. And I said, well, I'll move to Hull and start my life off, and I did, and it was the best thing I did, because I came to Hull, started to get settled. The plan was actually, I was originally going to go back and go and study in Manchester, but then the opportunity came up to study here, part-time, and then work full-time. So I stayed around, and I'm glad I did, because I've seen the growth and the development, and I think the opportunities that I've had in Hull, I would not have had in Manchester. There's a lot of my old friends I look back on that I went to college with, and I see their updates, and some of them for years, while I was getting a role in marketing at a small business here and getting that experience and studying, they'd just come out of uni and were stacking shelves in Tesco, and I felt like, oh wow, that's an interesting opportunity. I'm not sure, because there's such a high population and high competition in Manchester. I think in Hull it's the right size where it creates an opportunity to do something and be something, I guess it's still, big fish in a small pond type thing, which sounds a bit derogatory to Hull, really. I'm not trying to be, but that's because Hull is a much smaller city. You can be, if you've got aspirations to do something and be someone, then I think there's a bigger opportunity here than maybe in other cities that have already had that. Do you know what I mean? It's like my What's On guy. There's tons of him in Manchester with millions of followers, but there was no one doing it here.
Yeah.
So it's created an opportunity where I wouldn't otherwise had, you know.
We say that a lot though, don't we? Like, Hull's given us a chance and an opportunity. Like, I wouldn't necessarily be on the radio if I wasn't in Hull, because not many cities in the UK now have sort of community stations like this, or give you a chance to even do a podcast like this. So,
better off for work. Yeah, because we had Fiona on last week, and she said exactly the same thing.
Right.
We've had people say this to us before.
Yeah.
Opportunity. There seems to be a key word associated with Hull.
Yeah.
Is there anything else other than Hull's population that you think affords it said opportunities?
Well, I think it's because, and this is the negative side, I suppose, is that I think people who are the majority of natives, let's call them, right? So we're out of towners, they're the natives, right? Don't see the opportunities, and it's probably because of the media that's been fed to them in the last 20 years, 30 years, right? That Hull is this crap place, it's got nothing going for it, and that's where you live, and that's where you're born, and that's where they grow up with this mentality of, like, everyone in their 30s, right? Everyone that I know that grew up in Hull, like, are all like there's now one in Hull, there's nothing here, there's nothing where. So I think that almost sets their own ceiling, because they don't look for the opportunities. So when people come in and they've seen the outside and what's available, and then come in and go, what, you don't have that? Okay. And then, I always, one example I always use is that, like, Uber, right? So the taxi companies everywhere else, right? But, then you've got taxi companies here who are going, well, there's no Uber, we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah.
We'll do our own app.
Yeah.
And we'll create the own Uber of Hull.
You've got, like, Drive, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. And there's a few others.
Yeah.
And that's what they do now, because there is opportunity. But again, he's an out-of-towner. He doesn't actually live in Hull. Funnily enough, they went to colleges next door to each other. Funnily enough,
the person who set up Drive?
Who set up Drive, correct? Yeah. Now he lives in Leeds, but he's obviously here in Hull quite a lot, obviously. But he's and he likes Hull. Well, he said that to me anyway. Maybe he just. Like
he does live in Leeds.
That's right. Yeah. But he just opportunity. I think opportunity came up to do it, and obviously they went and bought out a load of other taxi companies, and then set up their own Uber style service. Now, obviously, there's a lot of complaints that go with that as well. To be fair to them, obviously not everyone wants to do online, and that's why the other taxi companies come in, I suppose, because Hull's still an old sort of working class town, so to speak, is that people still want the old pick up the phone and I'll book my taxi in person, thank you very much.
Is that a generation thing though? Because that's something my mum and dad would do.
Exactly.
Mum's like, I'm not getting on the app, I'm calling them up, and then you get an automated thing and she's like, oh
yeah,
God.
That's right, yeah, exactly. Whereas, so there is that gap again, is that people going, well, all right, if that's not for everyone, we'll take the calls. And we'll provide a service where you actually speak to someone.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of
Best
small
of both
ones like
worlds.
that. Yeah, exactly, and they provide the app as well, but you're right. So there is that opportunity that you think where, and I think that is most people I know that have done that sort of thing typically are out of towners. Mm-hmm. They tend to be because most people in Hull, tend to have sadly the mentality put over them throughout growing up. Certainly, if people in their 30s or whatever. And they just don't see the opportunities. I'm speaking generally because there might be people listening to this and going, I'm from Hull and I've done this. And absolutely, I think that's amazing if people can see that. But I do see a lot of, out-of-towners that are the ones that seem to take up most of the opportunities I see.
Well, I guess it's coming from elsewhere, being like, oh, we've got this here, but it's not in Hull, so let's do it ourselves. Whereas if you're in Hull and you're not necessarily going out of town, then you don't see it.
Exactly. Like if the guy from Leeds, and think Uber... Right, Uber are a threat because they've got one in Doncaster as well, so he does Doncaster and Hull. And you think he's obviously he's got seen the opportunity. Hull doesn't have it, right? I'll do it myself then.
Yeah.
So.
How would you compare? So when did you come to Hull?
So I started living here in 2005, June 2005.
How would you compare it then to what it's like now?
Well, it's a totally different place now, I would say. I remember when I first, I came to Hull, I didn't have too many prospects. I'd finished college back in Manchester, looking for things to do, jobs. I ended up getting a job at a call centre before I left, and I hated it, working for O2 and then Norwich Union as it was at the time. And so that's why I knew I wanted life to start off, and I came to Hull, so I started looking for call centre jobs, and I'd gone from what I thought was a crappy job to a really crappy job. Because when I got to Hull, like, so I'd gone from this professional call centre with headsets, computers, everything like that, and I thought that was crappy. And when I turned up to Hull, there was this mobile phone company. They don't exist anymore, so I can say the name. They've got, funny enough, called Talk Mobile, right, which does exist, but by Talk now. But Talk Mobile, and they're on this little pokey office at the top of Ferrens Way. And I got in the office, and it was literally like, it was almost like out of some sort of comedy sketch. It was like, right, there's your desk, and there's your phone, and there's a piece of paper with a list of numbers on I want you to call, and that was it. And I'd gone from this to that, like gone from that to this, like that, like with me, putting the phone between my shoulder, like I went home with neck ache at the end, and you like that, just like, honestly, you'd never get away with it now with health and safety. But honestly, yeah, and I'd gone from that, and so it was a bit of a shock coming to, and then I'd come out at 5 o'clock. And I come from Manchester. It might be the same, like say, I'd in other cities, because obviously I know you guys are Liverpool. I'll say Merseyside, because obviously I know you don't class yourself as a Liverpudlian, do you? But but in Manchester, you walk out at 5 o'clock, and if you work in Manchester, the city's buzzing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And you can go up to, let's say, you go to Trafford Centre until 10 o'clock at night every night of the week. And I came out of Hull at 5 o'clock in the middle of the summer. This was June. And honestly, I'm sure I saw a tumbleweed come by. Like that. It was nothing. I was like, what the chuff? Like, there's no one about.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. So started working this crappy job, and then obviously, thankfully, at least I was like with Laura, so I could go, right, okay, what should we do? And we just hung out. It didn't really matter, does it, when you're that age? You just get to hang out. And but yeah, and it was just like, now some people might say that's what Hull's like now, but it's not. It's not, at least when you come out at 5 o'clock, because there's more of a cafe culture kind of thing going on with more restaurant. I mean, I can't even remember. I only remember one restaurant in the city centre in Hull when I came, and that was Leonardo's. Do you remember? It was at the bottom of Prinny Quay.
I have
Leonardo's.
How long have you guys been?
Yes, I do. Is it on? It's opposite Prince's Quay, isn't it?
It's now opposite Prinny Quay. That's right. Yeah,
it's on those cobbled streets.
That's right.
We've been
I
in
know
it.
that one. Yeah.
We've
on
been
Dock
in
Street,
it.
Princess Dock Street.
Yeah.
Well, that used to be inside where Pizza Express is.
Right.
Oh my word.
And that was, I don't remember any other, apart from some maybe smaller cafes and stuff, I don't remember any other like restaurant.
Well, we
in
were
the city
talking
centre.
with Fiona last week, because Humber Street is now a go-to place,
Yes.
isn't it, for like drinks, food. Like we would go to Humber Street, wouldn't
Yeah,
we?
it's nice, especially over the summer. Yeah,
but she was like, whenever she moved here, she was like, Humber Street, what? Like, that's the thing. Do you know what I mean? No one would ever have said, let's go to Humber Street.
No, that's right, because it was just there was nothing there. That's right. It was an old fruit market that closed down.
Yeah.
So the investment, exactly that. Going back to that question, in 2005 there was nothing like that. I just remember like the one restaurant, the only cinemas in the city were Odeon and Cineworld in Kingswood. St Stephen's didn't exist. It was just the old bus station that was there. It was just. Like say, not that like again, I never thought, oh, this is terrible. I just came out. The only shock to me was that I was like, oh, there's nowhere open. Do you know what I mean? There's nowhere open after 5. And like I say, it's not exactly the most sort of cosmopolitan cities it is. We're full of things all day, every day, or anything. But at least you can, like you just said, you can go down to Humber Street and you can do something there, or even like Prinny Quay, obviously they're trying to do things, but there's a cinema at the top there, and they've got a few, like a couple of places on the bottom, and like Nando's and Pizza Express, or you can go to St Stephen's and do the same there. So there are choices. None of that was there. St Stephen's wasn't built until 2007. So I've just seen it grow and become, and especially since City of Culture, that's the crazy one when City of Culture investment came in. And it was a pain for a couple of years because I'd just started the business 2016, and as going into it as a full-time business, and I remember all the streets were just dug up with orange barriers. You remember Barry the Barrier? It was just
this is before our time.
But so when did you move here?
2017.
2017. So you just skipped it. So before all the
we got all the good stuff.
All the nice pavement, which it's kind of funny. You look back and you're like, how does a load of paving make it so much nicer? But it does.
Yeah.
And they've done all that and invested it, and it makes, when you're walking through the city centre now, if it's on a summer's day, and you've got little cafes and stuff like with outdoor seating and things like that, and you've got the Queen Victoria Square and stuff, and the fountain spraying and stuff. I just think it's amazing, and it's just such a world away from what it was 18 years ago, nearly. Yeah,
good job you correct that out, because I was thinking, please don't ask me. I don't know.
Because it was about. I know it was like the first week of June when I moved here in 2005, so it's like 18 years since I've been here.
Oh my gosh, that's mad.
Like,
yeah, where do you see it going? So given all that has happened, where do you see Hull going in the next 10, 20 years?
Sorry, I thought I'd get rid of that sit. I thought I'd be a lot faster than I was. I took that far too casually. You have to edit that out.
No,
yeah, so I see, well, I would have liked, after 2017, I would have expected that we would have seen more like what happened with Liverpool in the capital of culture, right? So we've been left with obviously like better venues, right, which is great. Like, so you've got a better theatre, like Hull New Theatre. It wasn't bad before, but they invested some like £16 million into it from the Arts Council and stuff like that, different funding pots. They've got obviously the Bonus Arena is the big one that's been left behind. Why it's called an arena, I'm not sure. It's more of a venue, but it's a great venue, fantastic concert venue. You know, you go and see a show there. It's fantastic, and you know, that's sort of a little bit of the legacy that's left behind. I do honestly believe that in the next 5 years, the city centre particularly will be a very different place, as long as investment keeps happening, and it seems to be. So people might not be aware of that there's Albion Square. So some people do, some people don't. But so what people see as a big eyesore right now, which it is, to be fair, is at the old BHS building, and that whole site around there with the car park at the back and along Bond Street, that's getting completely flattened, and they're going to be building new apartments and offices and houses. In the middle is going to be what they call a new urban park, and a multi-storey car park, right? That's going to create more people, obviously, living in the city centre. And again, I always said, because I saw it in Manchester for the Commonwealth Games back in 2002, well, before that, because of the Manchester bombing, so in that investment period, it was the same that was happening in Manchester. And all of a sudden, like, because that investment came in and they started redoing everything, all these offices and everything just started popping up. And what happened is that because you had more people living there and more people working there, of course you have more footfall. And if you've got more footfall, that means more shops will turn up. The problem is right now is that you've got 5 years before that's realistically going to be in place, because you've got about 3 years till Albion Square is finished. Like I say, you've got obviously other smaller offices, apartments all popping up at the same time along with it. And by the time those houses are full, you know, you see you're looking about 4 or 5 years away. And there's other developments that they're looking around, like directly outside the Bonus Arena when you walk out. They've got more stuff planned for around there, the old Staples site and stuff, you know. So as long as that happens, we're going to see a very different Hull take, or certainly the city centre, become a really good destination, I hope. In the meantime, my worry is that the negativity is holding things back. Because I think if people came in and gave it a chance into the city centre and saw what was already there, which is, it's quite, what I see is quite spaced out, because like, it's like the old thing, you know, you can say, oh, half of it's closed, but half of it's open, right? Right, that's the only way, half empty, half full. So the bits that are open, right, they're a bit dotted about, because you've got some in St Stephen's, you've got here, and there's no real joint plan, unfortunately, at the moment, or I should say, there's no been plan up to this date. I do think there is a plan going forward. I got to meet with the head of culture, place, and city centre. I've got the title right, at the council, and she's very data driven. So this year she's doing a lot of work in terms of collating that data together, which is going to affect all kinds of things like events and places and how they're going to set up. You know, so yeah, I do see a lot of positivity if they can start to turn things around and get those messages out there, because I think a lot of it is communication. I think a lot of, like, you know, we've been trying to do some work with Visit Hull to try and go, right, let's get a campaign together to promote the city centre, right? Because right now I don't see anything. There's nothing that actively encourages you to go into the city centre, so that negativity will only continue. But if we get people, if that's your campaign saying, like, all the things that you can do, I mean, there's a perception about parking, that parking's expensive, yet you can park all day in the city centre for £3.
Yeah.
You know, on a Saturday or a Sunday for £3. You know, and people don't know that. There's like you know, and they've got this perception that it's, and so all this negativity spreads around. And there's only so much we can do, but I think you've got to then invest in some sort of communications and marketing to say, why come into Hull City Centre? Let's do some actual campaign, you know, and tell people what's here and why they should come in. Because I bet if you do, there's going to be a lot of people that will come in and be pleasantly surprised.
It interests me, well, what you said there interests me, because obviously we've been here now 7 years, haven't we? 6-7 years.
6 years, yeah.
There you go. Again, I didn't really listen to maths. And I honestly don't have a clue what's going on.
Right.
And I get frustrated. And this is, I mean, local governments all over the country is not great at getting the message out.
Right.
I studied politics. I feel qualified to say that. So what frustrates me with the council is I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And I don't know what the companies in the city centre and the city are doing.
Right.
That's what annoys me, because I have to go out and find it on some crazy website or whatever.
What, like what's on?
No.
Crazy website. No, true. Yeah.
Digging me hole again.
Yeah.
But I just think.
What do you mean that you don't know what's going on, just in general?
No, I know what's going on in Hull because we have Hull What's On. And we'll get to that in a minute. But if I want to know the genesis of someone's thought who's got a shout, I just don't see it anywhere. Whereas in Liverpool, I feel like everyone kind of knows what's going on and maybe what can change. I just maybe it's because I went out of town there and I'm not part of the community. That I don't know, so I don't really know. But
I'd say it's more the negativity of what the people that are. So in Liverpool, would you say, right? If you're from Liverpool, would you say the majority of people in Liverpool are proud to be from Liverpool?
Yeah.
And I'd say the same for Manchester.
Yeah.
In Hull, I think it's the other way around. I think it seems to me the minority of people from Hull are proud to be from Hull.
Why is that?
I
is
think
it just negative connotations?
Yeah, I think it's what we were saying before. There's just the amount of negativity they've grown up with. It's just blighted it, and, they had the collapse of the fishing industry and stuff, and it didn't recover for a long time after that. So you've got this generation, or 2 generations maybe, in the middle of life right now that are just feeling like, I don't know, like I say, there was a lot more positivity with City of Culture, but again, I think people sort of saw it as a flash in the pan, and just like, and it didn't help with the fact that, all right, we had that City of Culture for 2017. In my opinion, I think more could have been done in the years after it. I know we had COVID in 2020, but right up until 2020, I think you're talking 2018 and 2019, those 2 years could have been, in terms of like big events, cultural events, which is what was City of Culture ended up creating really, is that we had a massive gap between the end of 2017 right up until something like I think August of 2018 was the first event that year that was done by the City of Culture team. And that's not their fault as such. What happened, it was just, I don't know where the decision's been made down the line somewhere, but there was a gap. And then the staff didn't know necessarily where they were going in that team and stuff, so they didn't know if they could plan events, and they didn't know what budget they had. It was like all the budget got ploughed into 2017, and then it's like, there you go, we've had our party now, see you later.
Now, yeah.
And really what should have done is maybe they've gone, you know what, 50% of the budget will be done in year 1, the other 50% will be spread over the next few years, all right? Because the only thing that we've been left with as a legacy is essentially, like I say, is an upgraded theatre, a big concert venue, and a nice load of paving.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it feels, and I think that's what people kind of feel the same. It's like, okay, we've had a few upgrades, but it's not like in Liverpool, where capital of culture, and all right, it was big, it was European capital of culture, you had visitors all over Europe coming, but it was a catalyst for something more, and it created an awful lot more.
Well, European gave Liverpool 1, which is essentially a massive shopping centre, and that pretty much, because I remember Liverpool before that was there, and there wasn't much there, to be honest. And then Liverpool 1 came, and it just changed Liverpool completely, didn't it?
Right,
yeah.
Right.
I see.
And you got the new Echo. Oh, it was called the Echo.
It's now the M&S Bank Arena.
Yeah, M&S Bank Arena.
But people still call it the Echo.
I still call it the Echo.
They do, don't they? Yeah, exactly. I was hoping something like that would happen to Hull, but it seems to have been hit by the fact that the funding, in my opinion, wasn't spread properly.
Yeah,
I might be wrong. Like I say, I don't have enough insight. All I can see is that my understanding is that most of the budget did go in year 1, and then they were left with very, dribs and drabs, so to speak. And the team behind it obviously done their best to bring back events, but
so what you're trying to say, there wasn't really a strategic vision. It was kind of more
not long term.
Yeah,
I think like I say, they got some sort of 50%. It was something like 50%. Public money and 50% match funding from local businesses. But I think what would have been ideal is to say, all that funding from local businesses or from probably one side of the pot, either way, let's go and have a long-term plan that's going to really invest in Hull. I don't know whose responsibility that is. You know, if I'm honest,
I think that's part of the problem now. That's what I
don't
think.
know.
At least.
Yeah.
But like, say, that goes back to the comms thing. Like, I don't know who that comes down to. It's the councils or what? I don't know. But I know that the new head of place and culture and city centre obviously has then got their work cut out. You know, and like you say, and then that going back to what you were saying about knowing those things, that's kind of why I started what I did, because I felt the same. The communication. There's so many people have said to me, like, they're going down, they might go through the city centre and they go, oh, I didn't know that was on today.
Yeah.
Right? And they feel gutted because they feel unprepared to come to that event and make the most of it. And I've had that so many times, and that was one of the things that was me. So that's why I did what I did, and started going, right, well, if I had one place that you could just come to and go, tell me what's on Saturday, you know, and that was to try and solve that, and obviously we've expanded into, you know, I like to know about things like regeneration news, so we publish those kind of news stories as well. So that's what I mean, I'm trying to get into one place. I have a newsletter that goes out every week, and it's like, right, if it sounds like proper, what's the word, like overly ambitious, this one, but I always say if you subscribe to our newsletter and read it every week, subscribe to our newsletter and read it every week, I honestly think it'll change your life. Which sounds really, like I say, big, but honestly, because what happened to me when I started doing Hull What's On was I found, because I knew what was happening, all the time I was going home saying, oh, they've got this weekend, do you want to go to it?
That's what I started doing.
Yeah.
You know, and what happens is, so the chain reaction from that is that you go to the event, what you're doing, you're spending more quality time with the people that you love. So that's changing your life. Yeah. You know, you're getting more quality time with your family and your friends.
And just quality of life as well.
Yes, experiencing something new and different.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, someone came up to me last week, which was really nice. It really made my day, because we're going to check out this new restaurant. One of the perks of the job, obviously, we get to check out quite a lot of restaurants. And a new place up on Heron Lakes called Pasco. You know, Pasco's Italian. Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, we went there the other week.
We literally went there last week.
Right, okay. Yeah, which one?
St Andrew's Quay.
St Andrew's Quay, okay.
Yeah.
So I went to the one at the lakes. I won't ask for your opinion because it's putting you on the spot, but I thought it was amazing. I thought it was fantastic, right? Does that mean, was it on the...
It's a good job. It's a good job you didn't ask for our opinion.
Oh, no.
No. I love the Pasco's in Cottingham, which I think, is that the original one?
That's the original.
That's where we were students,
I love that one. So we used to go there quite a lot, And then we went to the one in St Andrew's Quay.
Wasn't the same.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah.
You have to pass that thing, because the owner, James, he does work flipping hard to make sure that it's top-notch quality. So if anything's amiss, he'll take it seriously, you know. He really will.
I feel bad now.
But
I know,
no, well, that's good. Like I say, you get a bit of feedback, but he does take, so like the top chefs that he's got, what he does, he puts them into a restaurant and then trains up the chefs, and then he'll go to the new one, which he's got up at Heron Lakes. So if you went the other week, all the junior chefs, if they've not quite doing it how they're supposed to, he needs to know that feedback anyway. So that might be good, but yeah.
Have to get him on.
Yeah, exactly. But I found the food, like, I just thought it was absolutely fantastic, right? This new one, like I say, got up at Heron Lakes. Anyway, as we were getting out of the car, obviously I've got the branded car, get out of the car, me and Laura, and this woman comes up to us, really, really kind, just says, oh, you the guys from you Hull What's On? I'm like, yeah. She's like, I love what you do. I've followed you for years, and if I hadn't, I've done things I never would have discovered if it hadn't been for you. You know, and it's like, oh, wow, that's exactly why I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's the reward, isn't it?
It is. That's why I'm doing it. It's not as much as I want to make money or whatever, you know, that's fine. But why I'm doing it, our mission and purpose, is to help people experience more of what's available in Hull and East Yorkshire. So that's why I would say, like, if you just subscribe to the newsletter and open it every week, don't subscribe, but open it every week and scan through it and you see a story or an event or whatever that you might like, and just check out the What's On picks that we do this week and stuff. Honestly, it will drastically change your opinion on Hull, your life in Hull, even if you are native and don't think it's crap. You know, you are going to do it, you know. Yeah. Is that going to be bleeped out your podcast? I don't know if you class that as a swear word or not.
No, I think you can.
We'll just get away with that, yeah. I think people have become desensitised to crap.
That's it, exactly. But, well, there's that guide, wasn't there, in Craptown, so, yeah.
What do you want to achieve with Hull What's On? Like, what's the long goal with Hull What's On?
Go to other places like Hull and do the same. And do more. Yeah. So, the next area we're looking at is Teesside. Very, very similar area to Hull in terms of, like, so you got Middlesbrough, often referred to again in the same way. Hull has a lot of negativity about it, but you know, but similar population, working class town. The reason why that came up is because before the pandemic, I was looking to expand and I was trying to do it as all one big guide. So it's all Hull. Started off as Hull What's On, and then about 2018, I was like, right, I want to go and do it everywhere. So I had this idea to effectively do like what was, if you think of a cross between an events guide and like a TripAdvisor. So it's like TripAdvisor but for events, right? Because they just do places. TripAdvisor but for events, right? And I was going to launch it everywhere, right? But then I launched it in January 2020. So then 2 months later, we're all in lockdown. Yeah, exactly. So it didn't take off, obviously. And so, but it made me realise so I came back to just doing Hull. That was more the fun thing, and just do it a step at a time, and don't bother with looking at the big cities like Manchester or Leeds or Liverpool, because they've already got these great What's On guides there. But the places like Hull and Middlesbrough and so on, all get forgotten about. But I set up a load of Facebook pages because I was trying to do this thing. And the one that basically, when we all shut down and weren't doing anything anymore, the only one where people kept posting on the timeline and stuff was Middlesbrough or Teesside. So it made me realise actually there's an appetite there, and it makes sense because obviously if you've already got really good What's On guys, like you say from Liverpool or Manchester, you kind of, you can just find something. It's quite easy to find stuff. Where I guess in Teesside is a bit like Hull, and it's those kinds of places that are large enough where you've got a population of about 500,000, like Hull and East Yorkshire together type thing, where you can do that and then, get in there with a good What's On guide and get all that information in one place. And they've probably got the same challenges as people in Hull. I never know what's on. No one ever tells me. Yeah. Because the council there maybe struggle to provide that as a service to any effective method, because it's hard. Like I say, it's a full-time job, you're doing it,
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily have the budget or the resource or whatever. So like I say, we can step in and do something like that, and like we've done in Hull, but like I say, do it in somewhere like Teesside,
Yeah.
So in Hull particularly, what would you like to do with Hull What's On to get it to the next stage?
Well, for us, for me, it's all about growing that audience again. Yeah. I think the objective, I would love it. So it goes back to the mission again, is how many people can we convert? So at the moment, I feel like as a percentage, I would guess that, most the people in Hull, I would say that the minority are the ones that, going back to that figure again of, you're proud to say you're from Hull, and that you would actively promote Hull as a good place to live. Because again, you get that sort of feel as well, where people go, yeah, I'm from Hull and I'm really proud, but would you recommend people living here? Oh, no, I wouldn't recommend it. People, there's kind of that weird kind of in-between phase. But, like say, if people are growing up in Manchester, it's like, yeah, Manchester's like the best place in we were always like, we're second city, not Birmingham, we're the second city. You know what I mean? Like that. It's that kind of thing. It was that kind of, tribal mentality.
A sense of patria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your community, your people.
Absolutely, where you don't get that in Hull, and I think there's certainly the minority.
Yeah.
So where would I love it to be? It would be amazing to think that one day that it would be the majority, at least, that it'd be a good 60-40 split at the very least. But I think, that's a lot of it is out of my hands, obviously.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is obviously down to what I see as the decisions coming from the council. I think I don't have any particular political allegiance, but I think that Labour previously did well to get all the investment that they got. Likewise, I think the Lib Dems are doing well listening to people and dealing with the issues on the ground, and thankfully they've been left with the legacy of the investment phase. I don't know if they're still getting out there and getting more investment, like high street funding and stuff, because what that's doing, if you don't know, I'm saying this because a lot of people might not be aware, but again, there's this perception that, it's really expensive to open a business in the city centre. Well, actually, it's actually more beneficial because there are grants available. And that's why you see like Whitefrigate completely like as a building site right now, because there is so much investment going on that all the buildings are getting redone out inside to create apartments on the top floor and then smaller retail units on the bottom to make them more affordable for small businesses. Because before there were like bigger retail units, like 2 floors, and of course that's a very, very expensive business rate because you pay for both floors. Where now they're going to make the top like all apartments, and then you just have a smaller retail unit, ideal for a small business. So, there's a lot going on. I think, like say, my vision would be that in Hull specifically, in 5 years' time, it's where I'm hoping it'll be, and that is Albion Square looking fantastic and people living there. Plenty of events, concerts, and so on. Prince's Quay filled up because it's a shame that Prince's Quay is obviously, and they know, they've got a good vision for that as well. Like they want to turn it into a really good nighttime venue. The guy who owns it now is Tokyo Industries from Manchester. So a fellow Mancunian knows exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But his experience and background is all like nightclubs and venues. So he wants to turn Prinny Quay into basically his biggest venue yet, essentially. And he wants like nighttime, like Roxy Lanes type thing going in.
That's cool.
And wants to get, he's obviously got the massive. It was called Warehouse Project or something, or Warehouse Concept or something.
That's the one in Manchester?
One's in Manchester. I can't which way around it is.
Warehouse Project is massive.
Yeah. Is Warehouse Project the one in Manchester?
Yeah.
So this was called Warehouse Concept then, or something like that, right? It had a very similar name, right? It's not called that anymore. Now they just call it something like Venue at Prinnicky, or PQ or something.
Warehouse Project is where DJs go, essentially, isn't it? Yeah. It's like a big...
it's by the old student union buildings.
There's one in Liverpool as well, isn't there?
No.
Or is it just Manchester?
I know they have big tech. Well, this is getting away from Hull. But there's big tech. I know my friends run them. Yeah. Big techno festivals down the Dock Road.
That would be cool, though. I could see Prince's Quay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It could be really good, and like I think a really good opportunity would be. So Hammond's closing was another bit of a kick in the teeth this year, wasn't it, for the city centre? Hammond's was meant to be when it opened. Not Christmas had gone, Christmas before, was bringing people in from Beverley. Wow, you get people in from Beverley to come into Hull, you're doing well, aren't you? Because they don't want to come into Beverley, generally speaking. They come into Hull, generally speaking, do they? They would rather go up to York without question. That's what they want to do, right? So, and even they were coming into the city centre to see Hammond's. And I think it worked well when it first launched because it was full of like gifts and stuff for Christmas. But then it just didn't quite fit the everyday market.
I think it was the prices. The price range is just too high. Like we went in, it was a tin of biscuits was about £10.
Yeah.
It's just like, who is going to pay that?
They price themselves off the market.
Yeah.
What do you think went wrong there? Just whilst we've got
I think exactly that. I think it's the fact that the product, say like product and price was not correct for the market. It would have been correct for the market for somewhere like people from around the outskirts of Hull. So you're talking about like your Willoughby, Cottingham, Beverley.
Yeah.
But it's not enough. That's not an everyday business in the city centre of Hull. They're not coming in because it's not convenient for them. So, I would say that's the biggest. They needed to create a shop that people wanted on an everyday basis with maybe some premium products. One of the key things, like I always got taught years ago, was like Virgin. It's called the Star on the Christmas Tree. That's the thing. Star on the Christmas Tree. So like full well that Virgin, Richard Branson will do his crazy stunts. You're never going to fly in one of his necessarily space rockets, right? But you will buy one of his holidays. Yeah, you will buy. You will bank with him, or you might buy one of his. As it was years ago, his records and his CDs. Yeah, because you see the touch. So if Hammond's had done that sort of, look at all these very nice things that we know you're not really going to buy because they're too expensive. Yeah. But people from Beverley and Cottingham and so on might buy them.
I think there was too much going on as well. There's like a champagne bar, a pizza place, a burger place, and it was almost like there's just kind of too much going on here. I don't really quite know where to go.
Yeah, well, on that front, because you're right, because then I suppose I'm talking more about the retail shop side, but you're right. Then you've got the food outlets and the bar and stuff, which could have been amazing. But my understanding is, having spoken to many of the kiosks in there, so what they did is that rather than charge a flat rent, they used to charge a percentage of takings, right? Which is a great idea to get someone just started because it means they've got no outlay on rent. The problem is that some of them were promised, like, say, 20% commission only, and one particular guy I know ended up getting charged 33%, right? Which is obviously a massive thing. So what they ended up doing was they create their products and stuff and they sell them at a certain price. And so eventually they just started putting the 33% on top. So, of course, you walk in and then you want to buy sort of like, I remember one was like, a steak sandwich and crisps, and it was £17.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, no one in Hull's going to, like, that's hard. I mean, it was amazing, really good quality food, amazing, but it was £17.
Yeah.
At lunchtime, so that's going to happen. So then it has to be an evening thing, it has to be more of a restaurant thing. But then so it just didn't quite sit right.
I remember going in once as well, and it was the cafe that was sort of at the front of it. And it was only about 4:00 in the afternoon. I was like, can I have a coffee? They're like, we're not serving hot drinks. And I was like,
oh, really?
It's a cafe.
That's really strange. Yeah.
Strange,
so again,
isn't it?
Yeah. Don't know what happened.
But
it's kind of weird.
But no, we went there the first night, didn't we? And it was booming. It was a really nice atmosphere. We got the pizza, we got a pint, didn't we? We thought this could actually be really good.
Yeah.
And then within a couple of weeks.
That's right. I know, it all died down, didn't it? And then you had like me and Laura went one on a Saturday night once, and we thought, right, we've just been to the opening of, because Sharky's came back, it was summer last year.
Yeah.
Right, it's different again now, but so he came back, did that, left at about, I don't know, 7:30, 8 o'clock or whatever, and went to go and get something to eat, and then about 8:30, 9 o'clock, we were like, oh, I want to go somewhere, where do we want to go now? So we thought, oh, I'll go down to Hammond's, they have events on. But they stopped it at 9. They stopped their live music at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was bizarre to me.
That's
but
when
surely
people
it'd be
are
there
gonna
10, 11
go
o'clock
there.
on a Saturday night at least.
Yeah.
You know, and then after 11 o'clock you might go down to a few bars and clubs or whatever, that's fine. But how would you not have your entertainment on until like 10 or 11 o'clock?
Yeah.
And we would have sat there buying more drinks or whatever and just enjoying life, you know.
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah, so sadly it's the wrong product, wrong price, probably not the wrong placement as such, but yeah, you know, like say I think it's a good spot, but
Yeah, right opposite the train station. It's a
I know.
great spot, isn't it?
it's really sad. And then I think they had a fallout with the landlord as well. So yeah,
Just to top it off. Yeah.
just to top it off,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So hopefully they can come back in some guys. I don't know. Maybe that would be good for Pretty
Yeah,
Key.
yeah.
That was what I was thinking.
Aye,
Yeah.
it's a good point.
Who's
Go
your main competitor? What's Hull's? What's on? Main
Ooh,
competitor?
good question. Yeah. I suppose like there's who else? No one's really doing in terms of what's on. I have competition in terms of advertising spend, of course, you know, because obviously, so that's how we make most of our revenue, and most clients that we work with come to us because they see it as a good audience that want to engage and want to do things around Hull. But of course, so that's it. I have a fair bit of competition as such with that. But in terms of an actual what's on guide, I suppose the closest would be, I don't know if I want to say their name, but Hull Live, Hull Daily Mail, Hull, what should be called Hull Daily Mirror, really, because that's who they're owned by.
Is it the same business? Hull Live, Hull Daily Mail, Mirror.
Yeah. So Hull
Right.
Daily Mail is just their old, like, 'cause it was an old. Hull Daily Mail was a
The local publication.
well regarded. Yeah, it was well regarded 20
Started
years,
off on White
20, 30
Fridays.
years ago. Yeah.
Opposite your office, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
yeah, printing. They were printing press, I
Yeah.
believe, is on there, and they've got. And then obviously they moved to the corner of Blundell's Corner, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And they've got, and they had the whole building there 20, 30 years ago, but then they got bought out by, I think it was a Lincolnshire publication initially, and then Northcliffe, and then they got bought out by what is now Reach PLC, which is Daily Mirror, basically.
Right, okay.
Trinity Mirror, as it was at the time. And now it's just, I mean, in my opinion, like, and a lot of people's opinion, it is just a local trashy Daily Mirror. That's all it is. And if you look on most of their content, you know, you're talking less than 10% of their content is actually local content. But they do some good stuff well. They've got some good people over there. They obviously want to do their job and stuff from a what's on point of view, yeah. They get a few. What they're really good at is being first on the scene for stuff. You know, from whatever that is, whether that's a what's on thing or whether it's like someone throwing bricks off a roof. Yeah, it doesn't really, that's what they're there, that's what they're good at, and they do
Yeah.
that better than anyone else. The issue that I have with them particularly is that the damage that they do to the city. So they spread that negative media, and that's fine, you know, in the sense of if you want to do some quality journalism, but they don't. It's just they jump onto whatever's trending.
Yeah.
And if they can see an opportunity, and this has been admitted not by Hull Daily Mail, but Leeds Live, the equivalent over obviously in Leeds, that they've admitted in the past that what they do purposely is that say there's a local business and they go and try it at a new food place. If that's a popular place, right, and that people like it, they will deliberately write an article trashing the place, because what's going to get more clicks? Them turning up and saying, "Oh, we went to this place and it was great,"
Yeah.
when everyone knows it's great, or them turning up and saying, "We turned up and it was horrible," because then people are going to go, "What? I love that place!" Click, 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 and they do it on purpose because all they care about is clicks, and there's no mission, there's no objective apart from just getting clicks and making money. That's all they care about, and that's what I don't like, because all of it is damaging, very, very damaging to the people here. The negativity it spreads as well, and the fact that they are deliberately trashing businesses who might just, all right, it's fair enough, you go and have a bad experience, they might be having an off day. Well, you know, restaurants can't be on top of things 100% of the time, you know, but it's not a balanced view. They've got such a strong following that they go and publish something that's very negative. That can really destroy that local business who's worked hard for maybe years trying to build their reputation, and they've just slated them overnight. You know, and then if you happen to be the flavour of the month, then they'll publish good things about you. you know, but they do it all the time. I say clients that I've worked with, like doing advertising campaigns, and they will, you know, I remember years ago, Prince's Quay, they opened the third floor outlet, if you remember, and, you know, they'd booked in media.
We don't remember.
Well, it would have been. Yeah, I thought it might have been after you were here. It was like 2018.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Maybe I just wasn't there.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure it was 2018. But they opened up and then did a big media campaign, booked in with us and Daily Mail, Viking, everywhere, right? So they'd spent some money, obviously, with Hull Daily Mail, and and then they announced all the stores that were coming and stuff like that, and then within hours, Hull Daily Mail basically had taken all the negative comments that people had said on their feed saying about Prince's Quay stores that are opening on the third floor outlet, and obviously some people were like, oh, those shops are no good for me, and some others were saying they're quite good. But all the negative ones, what they did is they copied and pasted them, put them into another article on their website, and then published that and what people thought of this, and then published like all the negative stuff like that people had said about it. And I was thinking, how on earth, like, you know, Prince's Quay, they're also trying something different. They're trying to diverse a bit and do something different and create an outlet where people are crying for, yeah, and all right, it's not everyone's cup of tea. They've got to start somewhere, and you're there slating them. And they've all, on top of that, they've also paid you thousands to run a media campaign. And there's so many places that are like that. They actually say, I'm not advertising with them anymore because I know that the editorial will just get hold of me and they'll just, you know, they did that to Hammonds again. You know, Hammonds got slated for some sort of jobs and recruitment because they were trying to recruit some trainee chefs. And Hull Life got hold of it and started saying how like they were recruiting and stuff, but they weren't paying very much wages and stuff. It was also, they just do it all the time, and I just think they hold back the city. They hold me back from my objective. Yeah. So I don't like that of what they're doing to the city. I feel like we're chalk and cheese. And what frustrates me the most is that people sometimes think we're part of Hull Daily Mail. I don't know why. I thought the logo was quite different and stuff, but it's obviously not. People, Hull, what's on? Oh, are you part of Hull Daily Mail? I don't like.
Absolutely not.
Where do you see Hull What's On coming into this? Would you ever consider news telling a Hull What's On? Would you ever consider trying to spin a story with a positive image as opposed to what they're doing? Well,
that's what we do all the time in terms of news content. Yeah. Now, I always say, and this is what we promise as a brand, really, I suppose, is that, you know, we know not all news is positive, right? But we don't need to deliberately spin it in a negative way. You know, so if there's an opportunity to be positive about something, we will try. Because we don't want to. It's not about sticking your head in the sand and just like, oh, nothing bad ever happens in Hull. It's the fact that you, like, say, it's got a glass half full, glass half empty scenario again. Is that you don't need to, like, just to get clicks, is put out a bad story, which is what they do. Right? And I will, you know, it's about putting out a story that is going to fit with our objective, you know, and our objective is to try and build people up, build Hull, build the city, you know. So part of our brand values is to achieve that objective, that mission objective, is that I think I had a phrase for this, I forgot now. It's something like, you know, support or celebrate local people and support local business. Right? Those are just two of our brand values, you know, that's how we do it. You know, so anything that comes up, we try to be positive and helpful, you know, to try and lift things up. We know not all things are great. Hammond's closing wasn't great. But again, I think we spun that article a little bit rather than saying, oh, it's closed and blah, blah, blah. It was, you know, Hammond's is closing. Where next? You know, where next? Where could Hammond's move to? Like, and trying, because they had said comments about that they were trying to look for somewhere else. You know, where else do you think it could go? You know, let's look forward, not just sit and go, oh, it's miserable again, everyone's closed. You know, let's try and think, right, okay, yeah, it's not worked out there, but where else could it be that would make a good contribution to the city? Yeah. You know.
Well, I feel like to finish, we like to ask our one guest that we've had on so far 2 questions.
Okay.
What are the questions, Liam?
Oh, okay. So first question is, I'll tell the first question, maybe we'll deliver the second. What does Hull mean to you?
What does Hull mean to me? Well, now it means home. Like, it's a place where I feel very settled. I love the balance of living here. Right. I know I think of some of your previous episodes where you've been talking about things you do, like going to the football and stuff like that. I think the balance of living here is really good. Like, I live in Kingswood, so I'm like, right, I'm slap bang in the middle where I can nip into the city centre in 15 minutes. If if I want to go to somewhere like Beverley, like maybe 15 minutes up the road. To get to the beach, I would go to Bridlington a lot during the summer, and it's only 45 minutes away. You know, and growing up in Manchester, obviously that wasn't. But it was about an hour and 15, and usually going to Blackpool. You know, and so it wasn't something we did very often. It was just like every bank holiday for a change. You know, as my mum used to be like, it's like, but it was just where now I can, we're surrounded by amazing countryside, but yet you've got again a city centre that to me has got enough going for it that you can. I love working here. I love having my office in the city centre. You know. Because I know I can step out at lunchtime and go and. It used to be years ago. You can nip to the bank if you wanted to. So obviously you don't need to do that anymore, do you? I can't remember the last time I actually went to the bank, but because you just got no money. But yeah, it's it's that. Yeah, I don't know. Like say, I just love that kind of balance of everything. Where again, don't get me wrong, I like it in Manchester, but people ask me, "Would you move back?" And I say, I don't think I ever would. Not that I don't love it. I love going visiting and all the opportunity and all the things it does, all the big stuff it does. I love going there for a visit and seeing my family and stuff. But I don't know if I could live there. I just think it doesn't have the lifestyle balance that Hull offers, and that includes the weather. Because again, I think the weather's slightly better. I don't know what it's like for, like say, in Merseyside, but Manchester obviously has a lot of rain. You know, and it makes a big difference. You know, you're here. It's a lot drier. You get summers that are a little bit hotter. Winters are a bit cooler, you know, but it's nice. There's less rain, you know, and that's I think that makes a big difference, you know.
Yeah, that's. I mean, the answer to that is beyond me. Something to do with the Pennines, isn't it?
Yeah,
where it gets trapped. So
all
like
the clouds gather up, and then it all just
it's also very
pouring down there, especially in North Manchester, where I'm from as well. Yeah.
How would you describe a Hullensian, as we like to call them, to someone who isn't from Hull?
How would I describe a native Hullensian?
Yeah.
Right. To someone who isn't from Hull? That's interesting. So, I actually have this conversation sometimes with my family. So I always laugh so the accent when I came here was unlike anything I'd ever heard. I don't know if that was the same for you guys.
Yeah, it was.
I've never heard anything like the Hull accent. Right. But I love it. I do love it. It's but I'd never heard anything really like it. So I always say that's obviously different. I think there is very much that old sort of typical Yorkshireman stereotype mentality going on. I think I always describe Hull is a big village, right? Which has the pros is that I love, like Laura always laughs because every time I go somewhere, I always bump into someone that I know, and that you'd never do that in Manchester because it's so big. But you walk down the street or you go to an event somewhere, it's like, hi mate, you know, you always see people, and that's what I mean. It's like even though there's in the city boundary about 250,000 in the city boundary and something like 700,000 overall in the whole county, you know, yet you can still bump into someone that you work with or someone that you've not seen for 10 years or something, and it's just, you know, you're in the same circles, and I love that. The downside is that kind of village mentality does kind of hold back a little bit of progress, like I was saying before, and it's kind of like, you know, I always say, like when I first started business, like when you network with people, like I always find people are a bit more like they're scared to collaborate on stuff, because I like to try and work, like with you guys with the radio station. When I say I like to collaborate, a lot of people might look at that and say, oh, you're competition because you sell advertising and I sell advertising, so we're competing on the same market. But I like to try and see opportunities for collaboration. So now we collaborate, and you guys are like 107's our official radio partner, and we're your official media guy or what's on guide, you know, and that works well. I think that sort of level of collaboration works. But like say, particularly over the last few years, I've seen that a lot of people in business, it's very much like I always say the village mentality of I'm the shopkeeper in this town. Yeah, you can't be a shopkeeper as well. I'm the shopkeeper here. You go somewhere else, mate. You know, it's like, so then it creates a bit of rivalry instead of thinking, oh, how can we work together and make something even bigger? You know, then, you know, and that's sometimes what holds things back. But the people here, describing them like, say, you know, friendly, you know, will speak to you like you've been your best mate the whole life, even though you just met him 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean? I think that's amazing. I love that. Yeah. I love that. So, yeah, as long as you can understand them, then you're all right, and you're in there. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave, for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
We appreciate your time. And thanks for listening.
No,
we'll
cheers,
see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.